Research and recording of Canadian Creepies happens on the shared land and traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. A key treaty governing this territory is the Dish with One Spoon Agreement. This treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee people binds them to share and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, settlers, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. We all share the responsibility of ensuring the dish is never empty, meaning we must take care of the land and the creatures we share in it. Canadian Creepies covers true crime, dark history, and disturbing events. Some episodes may include graphic descriptions or sensitive subject matter. We do our best to handle every story with care and respect for those affected. That said, we sometimes use humor and sarcasm as a way to process heavy content, never to disrespect victims, survivors, or their families. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back, creeps. You're listening to Canadian Creepies, and today, well, grab your broomsticks and your burn books because we're diving headfirst into part 3 of our Witch Trials in Canada series.
That's right. I'm Amanda Joy, your guide down the crooked path. And let's just say the trials this week is especially scorched. We've covered the fear, we've covered the folklore, and now we're digging deep into the fallout.
Because when the accusations stop flying and the smoke clears, what's left behind is just as terrifying. Broken lives, buried truths, and a history Canada would rather forget.
So light a candle, pour some protective salt around your chair, or just clutch your emotional support crystal, and let's get weird.
Welcome to episode 33, Beyond the Burning, What Witch Trials Left Behind, part 3. And just so everyone knows, part 1 is called Witch Trials Part 1, and Part 2 is called Hexed, Canada's Witch Hunts, in case you're looking for them. Because Amanda said she couldn't find them, and I said, well, that's because I made it very confusing and changed the titles. What happened was I really, that was our 10th episode, was Witch Trials in Canada. So I was only 10 weeks in. I was very green to podcasting. So that was the extent of my creativity, was Witch Trials in Canada when it came to a title. Now I have some other resources, ChatGPT, and I used those resources to come up with some more creative, better titles. And now people have to hunt for them.
Like I did the other day. I was like, I should refresh before I jump into this, and was like, yep, can't find.
That's right. So I guess also while we're here, this is our first official crossover episode.
This is, yeah.
So for those of you
excited,
right? For those of you who don't know, Amanda Joy is host of our sister podcast, Down the Crooked Path. Mm-hmm. Her own episodes come out on Thursdays as well. Do you want to do your elevator pitch for?
So I talk about beyond Canada with this particular podcast, but along a similar vein with stories that defy explanation, mysterious cases, strange disappearances, UFOs, cryptids, occult, anything that you can think of that sounds odd.
Yes.
Creepy.
Yeah, and they're really good episodes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm a little behind, but there's one I think that I'll have coming up in my queue this week. But I saved them all. Yeah, they're all, they're all in the episodes.
I do the same over with you guys as well. And I'm cleaning mode. Got to put on my podcast.
Right. Okay, should we get in? Oh, and also Amanda, for those of you who don't know, Amanda has her own segment on Canadian Creepies as well. It's also called Down the Crooked Path, so it's very brand consistent. You're going to be able to find her everywhere. And those episodes come out on Tuesdays. And with those, it's Canadian oddities and that.
Folklore mysteries,
yeah. And we haven't really been you do this and I'll do that. It's more we're just seeing what topics
what we're kind of drawn to,
and we're working together on that.
Yeah.
So that's how it's working between us.
It's worked,
and it's great. And we've grown our friendship because of it.
Yes, this is true. We have been friends for 10, 11 years now, something like that.
Yeah. Felix was born for sure. Did I know you before that? No.
No, I don't think.
Yeah.
Felix was
10 years.
little.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
Felix
so,
was little.
8 years, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Almost a decade.
And now finally we found a project to work together.
Right? I know, we keep saying that.
And here we are.
All those years later.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time to flush out, Also, for those of you who don't know, I am an addict, so there was that.
We love a good comeback story.
That's
now.
right. That's right. Okay, so I'm going to get into it.
We'll also blame the pandemic as well.
The pandemic too.
Yes.
Yeah, we couldn't get together. The pandemic made everyone squirrely.
Yeah, I'm on anti-anxiety medication
Hey,
because
shout
of it.
out.
Woo!
Yeah. I love my anti-anxiety medication.
Me too.
Changed my life.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Changed my life. I remember one thing that was just a naturally anxious thing for me was driving, and especially driving long distances. Like, it was just like I was always afraid, who's not afraid of getting into a car accident? But when you have anxiety, like an intense anxiety, like it's like it lives right like in your chest, right? So every time I was driving, it was awful. And then as soon as I found the right anti-anxiety medication, I remember I was driving to a dance competition like out of town, and it was like, oh my God. I am chilling right now. I was like, I'm not even sweating a bit.
Yeah. No, mine's all existential crisis. Like, when are my parents going to die? How much time do I have before that happens? If they live till this point, like, how many friends do I have? I couldn't sit by myself. Like, I'd never had mental health issues until then. And it was like how quickly it came on and how debilitating it was. Like, I couldn't sit in my apartment by myself.
Yeah.
I could, like, if you were sitting on the couch doing your own thing and I was over here, like, just working on whatever project it was I was working, and we didn't talk, I would have been perfectly fine. But to sit that and do that by myself, couldn't do it. Couldn't walk around the mall even though there's people there. It's not people that I know, so I couldn't be like, I'm good. Yeah. It's crazy how it affects everybody differently.
It is. It's crazy, how it affects everyone differently and how it like manifests itself differently as well. Because anxiety, it is something that is meant to keep us safe.
Oddly enough,
yeah. It's meant to. Its pure function is to keep us safe, and it's to like alert you of all the warnings. But like people with anxiety, it just like alerts us.
It's overdrive.
Yeah, it's like and one thing for anybody I've heard this phrase recently that was helpful to me. So anybody struggling with anxiety, to help you differentiate. Especially being a woman, I think it's hard to differentiate between your anxiety and your intuition.
Yes.
So what a quote I heard recently was, your intuition will never yell at you.
Yeah, I've heard the expression, your intuition isn't loud.
Yes.
Your anxiety is loud, your intuition is quiet.
Yeah. So that's for anybody. Hopefully that sits with somebody, Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, should we get into it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to start. So we're talking about history. It's again, this was a series I started at the beginning. It's a little less organized, but we're bringing it home with this one. And also, I'd like to say this is episode 33, part 3. Let's see what 333 means.
Oh, angel numbers.
Yeah, let's see what 333 means. Just before we get into it. In numerology and spirituality, the number 333, also known as an angel number, is believed to represent a call to action, creativity, and positive change. It signifies that it's time to embrace growth, expand your horizons, and trust in your intuition, and support your receiving from higher realms. And this is an episode about witches. So
you know what? It's the first, well, not the first of the month technically. It's the third of the month, another 3.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. It's the third of the month.
Right?
It's the 4th.
Oh,
yesterday was the 3rd.
My bad. I don't know my math or my calendar. But yeah, the month started with a new moon, and it's like the start of the month as well. All sorts of new beginnings. Yeah.
Oh, great. So everybody listening, take from that what you will. I always like to say, take what you want and leave the rest. I said that that was the phrase that was said to me in NA, Narcotics Anonymous too. They said, when you come to these meetings, take what you want and leave the rest. And I did that. I did that. And then you know what? I eventually started not taking enough for them. I'm still clean, but
that's usually how it goes.
Okay, so we're going to hop in with Scottish and Acadian folk tradition.
Gotcha.
which I think you'll find interesting. I feel like this is right up your alley.
Yes. For those listening, I do practice witchcraft.
Yes. I do smaller. I just more like meditate.
Oh no, I had like the candles and herbs out yesterday. And,
nice.
Yeah, my little casting circles and
nice. I did order like somewhere on Etsy like a couple years ago, like a beginner witch kit. So I have all this stuff, and I have a website I refer to. But I feel like I'm just like not. I don't spend enough time with it, so I'm like not in a place to cast yet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just want to be respectful of the magic and not willy-nilly just be throwing herbs down.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So Scottish settlers, particularly in Nova Scotia, carried with them long-standing traditions of witchcraft fears. So that
tracks.
Yeah, they brought these fears with them from Scotland, though these rarely resulted in legal action. So here in Canada, we didn't have like witch trials, really. We just didn't. Like in the sense of like Salem. Acadian communities also held folk beliefs in curses and supernatural powers, often tied to local healers or wise women who were respected but also sometimes feared. Man, they love to fucking put women in that place, eh?
They still do.
They still do.
They still do.
It's fucking brutal. Many Scottish and Acadian settlers carried deep-rooted beliefs in folk magic, supernatural forces, and protective rituals. While these traditions were often practiced harmlessly, they could also spark suspicion and accusations. So they brought with them, I'm just reading this over again, so they brought with them witchcraft fears, but they also had deep-rooted beliefs in folk magic, supernatural forces, and protective rituals.
Yeah.
So it was both, right?
It's kind of Celtic.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So Scottish immigrants, particularly in Nova Scotia, brought centuries-old fears of witchcraft, but also practiced it. Gotcha.
Their own witchcraft was okay.
Other people's witchcraft.
No
the
bueno.
indigenous witchcraft.
Not okay.
No. Scotland had one of the highest rates of witch executions in Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries, and remnants of these beliefs survived among Highland Scots who settled in Canada. Some Scottish settlers believed in the evil eye, the idea that certain people could curse others with a single glance, but the evil eye in other cultures is like a protective, like I have an evil eye at the door. It's like a protective, so funny. Protective charms such as iron nails over doorways, horseshoes, and special herbs were common in Scottish homes to ward off witches and evil spirits. Those are things witches do.
There's bells on my door right now.
Some healers known as cunning folk practiced folk medicine and were respected, but they could also be accused of witchcraft if misfortune struck a community. Wow. Okay, Acadian beliefs in magic and curses. Acadian settlers, primarily in New York, Nova Scotia, and PEI, Prince Edward Island, blended French Catholicism with folk magic. Oh. They were like a little Catholicism, a little folk magic.
I mean, if you look at rituals, basically, that they do.
Let's drink the blood of Christ.
Yeah, I'm going to have a high priest come into this sacred space, cleanse it with incense, perform this ritual, and then I'm going to give you the body and representations of the body and blood of a deity to cleanse you of your karmic energy.
Yeah.
Not magic.
Not magic. This is legit. Wow. Their traditions often mirrored those of rural France, where healers, midwives, and wise women used herbs and prayers for protection. It's just societies hate smart women.
Yeah.
Some Acadian communities believed in shape-shifting witches or sorcerers who could summon spirits to harm others. Legends of witch riding, where a witch supposedly tormented people at night, prevented them from waking, were common in Acadian folklore. Certain Acadian healers used protective charms, Catholic prayers, and natural remedies, but if their remedies failed, they could be accused of practicing dark magic. While accusations of witchcraft existed in these communities, they were rarely taken to court. Instead, suspected witches were often feared, gossiped about, or socially ostracized rather than legally prosecuted. I mean, snaps for that, I guess. I guess we didn't do the old throw them in the river.
Poor women in STEM.
Fucking, yeah, poor women. Yes, actually, though. Poor women in STEM. Okay. So that was that was the Scottish and Acadian folk tradition. So now we're going to move on to witchcraft in Indigenous contexts.
That's what I'm all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some Indigenous cultures had their own beliefs regarding harmful spiritual practices, sometimes referred to as bad medicine or sorcery. In certain cases, individuals accused of using malevolent supernatural powers. I was like, am I in a comic book for a minute? Could be punished within their communities, though this was separate from European-style witch hunts. Okay. So if you screwed it up, you could be punished. Great. Excellent.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. Many Indigenous cultures in what is now Canada had their own spiritual beliefs and traditions that colonial authorities sometimes misinterpreted as witchcraft. Which they would. Colonial authorities would do that. Mm-hmm. In some cases, these misunderstandings led to tensions, accusations, and even violence. I'd say in most cases. And Indigenous perspectives on witchcraft varied by nation, but many saw spirituality as an essential part of daily life. Some individuals were recognized as healers, shamans, or medicine people, using rituals, herbal remedies, and ceremonies to help their communities. Literally the same thing a church does.
Yeah.
Exact same thing.
Yeah.
However, some cultures also believed in malevolent spiritual practitioners, sometimes referred to as bad medicine people or sorcerers. These individuals were thought to use supernatural powers to harm others, cause illness, or manipulate spirits. In some cases, community justice systems dealt with accusations of harmful magic through banishment, shunning, or even execution. It's not good. And then there was a colonial repression of Indigenous spirituality. Because,
of course,
naturally,
it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't like.
No.
When
No.
not something new.
I'm scared of change.
Yeah. When European settlers arrived, they often misunderstood or feared Indigenous spiritual practices.
It's a cat.
I didn't know if it was you or the cat. I was like, okay.
Footsies.
Yeah. When European settlers arrived, they often misunderstood or feared Indigenous spiritual practices. Missionaries and colonial authorities labeled traditional ceremonies, vision quests, and healing practices as witchcraft or devil worship, which led to the Indian Act in 1876.
Fun.
And so the Indian Act and earlier laws banned many Indigenous ceremonies, including the sun dance and the potlatch, which were seen as pagan or superstitious. And I think I said this in a previous episode. Sundance is just a beautiful dance, and a potlatch is basically like a big meal.
You know, they have like a solstice celebration in Port Dalhousie with like the I think the Indigenous.
Oh, that'd be beautiful.
Yeah, and they it's called like they usually have event pages on Facebook, and it's called Drawing Down the Sun. Ooh. And so they'll have like the drum ceremonies and everything to welcome the solstice on the beach.
That's really pretty.
Yeah, I think it's Port Dalhousie or Sunset Beach maybe that they do it at. But
nice. I do think I have heard of that. Mm-hmm. I would like to go to that.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
Some Indigenous people accused of practicing witchcraft were taken to residential schools or forced to convert to Christianity. I hate that. Accusations of sorcery could be used by colonial officials to undermine Indigenous leaders or justify removing individuals from their communities. Despite these attempts to suppress Indigenous spiritual practices, many traditions survived and continue today. Thank goodness. Mm-hmm. The connection between the accusation of Indigenous peoples as witches and the residential school system is deeply tied to colonial control, religious conversion, and cultural suppression. Both were tools used to dismantle Indigenous spiritual practices, enforce Christianity, and justify violence against Indigenous communities. So it doesn't matter which way you slice Canadian history, all we're doing is using religion to justify violence against Indigenous communities and erasing their complete culture, pretty much. So
not like that's going on anywhere in the world today.
That couldn't be happening now. That's another episode. Canada's involvement in Gaza. Okay. Witchcraft accusations as a colonial weapon. Haha, our favorite. During the what is this phrase? Witch, you're a bitch. From Practical Magic.
I love Practical Magic. They're coming out with a second
one,
eh?
I hope it's good.
I know. I'm nervous about it.
It's going to be weird because Nicole Kidman looks younger now than she did when she did the first one. But...
Yeah. Witchcraft.
Yeah. We'll write it in. During the early colonial period, European settlers, particularly the French and British, viewed indigenous spiritual practices with suspicion. Many indigenous cultures had medicine people, shamans, or spiritual leaders who used ceremonies, herbal medicine, and rituals to heal and guide their communities. These practices did not align with Christian beliefs.
Of course.
Yeah. Leading missionaries and colonial authorities to label them as witchcraft, sorcery, or demonic influence. Accusations of witchcraft were often used to discredit indigenous leaders, break traditional power structures, and justify forced conversion to Christianity. Some of the earliest European records of witches, in quotes, in Canada involve indigenous women, because it's always about the women.
Women in STEM.
Women in STEM, that's right. Who were accused by settlers or missionaries of practicing dark magic when in reality they were carrying out traditional spiritual roles. You. Yeah, you. Still haunting the same old fast fashion? Time to dig up something better with Back from the Dead Goods, a Canadian small business where forgotten threads get a second life and sustainability meets spooky. This isn't just upcycled clothing. It's resurrected fashion with an eerie edge. Handpicked, reworked, and revived, every piece is as unique as a ghost story whispered at midnight. And because you're a part of the Canadian Creepies family, you get an exclusive deal. Use code Canadian Creepies at checkout for 10% off. Find them lurking on Instagram, Etsy, and Poshmark. Links are in the episode description. Give your wardrobe a second chance at life, if you dare. Hey creeps, it's Valerie here. And if you're anything like us, you love capturing a moment, whether it's spooky, sweet, or somewhere delightfully in between. Let me introduce you to our go-to for stunning shots, darkroom photography, based right here in the heart of the Niagara region. Mel, the brilliant eye behind the lens, is a lifestyle and creative photographer who brings a little bit of magic and maybe a touch of mystery to every session. She's got all her prices listed right on her website, super transparent, no tricks, and she runs killer seasonal specials around Mother's Day, Halloween, Christmas, and more. I'm telling you, her Halloween sessions, creepy perfection. So, if you're in the Niagara area and looking to capture memories that are hauntingly beautiful, hit up Mel at mel@darkroomphotography.ca or check out her work at www.darkroomphotography.ca. That's Darkroom Photography, where your memories come to life, even in the dark. So there's that.
Good times.
Yeah. By the 19th and 20th centuries, the suppression of indigenous spiritual practices became more institutionalized through the residential school system. Run by Christian churches and funded by the government, these schools were designed to assimilate indigenous children by stripping them of their language, traditions, and beliefs. Spiritual practices were banned. Students were punished for engaging in traditional ceremonies, storytelling, or even speaking about their spiritual beliefs. Fear of indigenous spirituality was reinforced. Children were taught that their own cultures were evil or pagan, or which echoed the colonial witchcraft accusations of earlier centuries. And traditional healers were targeted. Indigenous elders, shamans, and medicine people were often dismissed as sorcerers or witches, further demonizing their roles within their communities. And fucking the residential school system's brutal. Talked about it a little bit last episode, and I'm going to do a whole summer series on it. Start coming out in July.
There's so much to that. That's still coming out.
Still mass graves.
Yeah.
Like, and in our lifetimes, not everyone will be found.
Like, and it, like the resources that aren't going to fixing that and finding is kind of enraging.
It is enraging. So I had to plug in my laptop. It was going to die. It is very enraging. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we have like residential school, like, not deny. We do have residential school deniers. It's like, we know this is documented, and
there's a body.
There's bodies.
How can you not?
People's family members
That's
are
not
missing.
True.
Yeah. So the legacy of these accusations and policies are still felt today. The demonization of indigenous spiritual practices has had long-lasting effects, leading to loss of knowledge, internalized shame, and legal restrictions on ceremonies. Those should just be lifted.
Immediately.
Just lift all the legal restrictions.
Because isn't there like freedom of speech, freedom of religion that we are supposed to have?
Yeah.
Now, so
it's brutal.
Screw off.
Yeah, but like that's a whole, how like the police enforce that, right? Because on my street, even my neighbor, he's gone now, called the other neighbor, who is a person of color, the N-word, and the police were right there and they didn't do anything. And they said, we're the legalities police, not the moralities police. And Buddy was like, well, that's hate speech. Who enforces hate speech then? You know, like who? And the cops are like kind of stumped, but
if you were to say any
cops are pigs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. Arrested immediately.
I mean, I was
straight to jail.
I had to, because when they said, I wasn't here when they said the thing about hate speech, but when I got back and somebody told me that the cops were still outside, I started yelling at them from in here, and Kyle had to shut the door. I was like, I can't have you arrested today.
John would have to do the same thing with me, though. Amanda.
Yeah, like, stop. I'm like, well, I'm white, so he won't come after me. Like, you know.
You're a woman, though.
Yeah, true. I'm a woman with an opinion.
Which?
Yeah, that's right. Even into the 20th century, laws like the Indian Act criminalized indigenous ceremonies such as the potlatch and the Sundance, reinforcing the colonial idea that indigenous spirituality was dangerous or wrong, just as they had done with witchcraft centuries earlier. But by the 19th century,
oh, giddy.
The witch trials were long over, but laws against fraudulent witchcraft practices remained.
That makes sense.
So so the reason they have it, the law is, and I think it's still now, the law, it remained on the books until 2018.
Oh,
but the law,
2018?
Yeah, but the law was you can't pretend to practice witchcraft. And they worded it that way because if they said if they put in the law you cannot practice witchcraft, then they would have had to acknowledge that witchcraft is real.
Right.
So the law was you can't pretend to practice witchcraft.
I don't pretend.
Yeah, that's right.
For one.
Like, okay.
Listen.
Right. The 1892 Criminal Code of Canada included a law against pretending to practice witchcraft, which remained in effect until 2018. While it was rarely enforced, this law was sometimes used against fortune tellers, psychics, or people accused of fraudulently selling supernatural services.
Okay, but what about like at Halloween? How do you like?
No pretend witches. Every child's arrested.
So
hunt them down.
All right.
Arrest them.
All right.
Get their candy.
Loophole.
Yeah.
Get their candy.
Yeah. The cops start stealing all the kids' candy. You're a witch. Give me your candy.
Oh my God.
Unlike earlier European laws, this law didn't assume witches were real. Instead, it was designed to protect people from scams. Okay. The law remained on the books until 2018 when it was repealed as part of a broader effort to modernize Canada's justice system.
Trying to collect my thoughts here because there's a lot going on upstairs right now, especially as I'm thinking of the Wiccan communities and stuff like that. Like I'm not a practicing Wiccan. I classify myself as a eclectic, solitary gray witch,
right?
Or pagan.
Yeah.
I follow the wheel of the witch's year and everything, and the Istvats and the Sabbats and stuff like that. But I don't follow Wiccan. But that is they're a religion that practices witchcraft,
right?
So how do you? I mean, I guess it does all go into infringing on people's religious rights and religious beliefs.
That would be infringing.
Yeah.
That's why it's pretending to. So that, and then I guess they used it more to
How do you define pretending?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you, especially when you're
just go
crossing...
after the street tarot readers. Go after the psychic on Lake Street in St. Catharines.
There's actually one that lives on Armory that I
Is
yes.
she good?
Yeah, I see her regularly.
I'll go there. I'll go there. That's no problem.
Yeah. I sit and have tea with her sometimes.
No, nice.
Witchcraft with her herbs.
That's right. You sip your intentions.
Yes.
Although Canada never experienced large-scale witch hunts like those in Europe, the fear of witchcraft and supernatural practices persisted in folklore, religious beliefs, and legal codes for centuries. Today, there is a renewed interest in the history of accused witches, folk magic, and intersection of colonial law and superstition. Today, interest in witchcraft and historical accusations has grown with a shift towards reclaiming and reinterpreting these past beliefs. Historians and feminist scholars examine witchcraft accusations as a way to understand gender dynamics, social fears, and power structures in Canadian history. Love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that.
Sounds on the nose.
You're going to like this. Modern Wiccan and pagan communities in Canada embrace witchcraft as a spiritual practice, separating it from the historical fear and persecution associated with the term. Folklore and ghost stories keep the legends of accused witches alive, particularly in Quebec and the Maritimes, where tales of supernatural women persist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Though Canada never had large-scale witch hunts, the country's history, our country's history, reflects centuries of superstition, religious influence, and social fears about the unknown. And even to this day, like, think about the social fears, like, about it's carried through, like, those social fears have carried through to, like, the LGBTQ community, I would say.
Because they're different.
Because they're different.
They're different.
Yeah. And neurodiverse people, and you know, because they're people who don't fit into the societal norms.
I bet there was.
This podcast is for you.
I bet there was a lot of actually neurodivergent people as well that were accused
who were like,
of
I
witchcraft.
can see the colors.
Well, there's
or they were like, I can see the colors of the numbers.
Yes, or the people. What's it called when you see names as colors?
Oh yeah, I don't remember what it's called, but yes.
There was this.
They're like, oh, you're green.
This meme
like,
I had seen. That was like, I'm not good at math neurodivergent. I'm friends with animals neurodivergent. And that makes me think of witches as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Animals just come to me.
Yeah, they do. They really like me. Animals and small children.
Yes.
Really like me.
Yeah.
Not even so small, like 2, 3.
Yeah.
They get a little older and think I'm weird, but I'm like, that's because I just go, ooga booga. Okay, so we're going to talk about like a modern witch. So I got some person. I think it's a man. Okay. In 2017, and tell me if you've heard of this person, Murali Mathialu. Actually, I'll just Google them, see if it's a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. We were just talking about it's Pride Month. Their gender doesn't matter. They were also known as Master Rajav.
I'm not familiar. No.
Okay, so they were arrested in Toronto, Canada, on charges of fraud, over $5,000, extortion, and pretending to practice witchcraft.
Pretending.
Because it was 2017.
Right.
Originally from India, Mathialu had been in Canada for less than a year at the time of his arrest.
Different.
Yep. But he distributed business cards offering $20 psychic readings by placing them in mailboxes and handing them out in shopping malls during February and March 2017. A 44-year-old man from Brampton responded to the advertisement and was told by Mathialu that his sick daughter was possessed by an evil spirit. Mathialu convinced the man to pay over $100,000 for rituals to remove the spirit.
See, that's where I start to get a little... Are you for real?
Yeah, I don't think they are for real.
Or is this a scam? Because, like, I have seen a lot of psychics and
There's
stuff.
There's a lot of scams.
And yeah. Usually if they tell you that somebody close to you is going to die, you're going on a trip and you're getting a promotion all in the same reading, you're like, bullshit.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
All these things.
Yeah, no, it's got to be one, though.
Yeah.
For sure one. When the daughter's condition did not improve, that's when the man reported Mathialu to police. The charge of pretending to practice witchcraft was a part of Canada's criminal code at the time, targeting individuals who fraudulently claimed to have supernatural powers for financial gain. So you could say you have supernatural powers as long as you weren't charging people for them. This law remained in effect until it was repealed in 2018.
Now, there are a lot of psychics, like if you look at their websites and stuff when you go to book, that say for entertainment purposes only. And it's probably to avoid situations like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And a lot of them will say, like, I don't give healthcare advice, like, don't, like... Yeah. I know that they can read into, legitimate ones, can read into, like, healthcare issues and stuff like that. Like, I had my friend Julie, who's a professional psychic, look into it when my sister was sick. And she was accurate, but I know she's for real. But if you were to go to, a random person, they could misconstrue that. So
somebody who you don't know.
It's like how Tim Hortons has to put careful hot coffee on their coffee.
That's
mugs.
Right. That's right. I do just want to say that it's important to note that there is another individual named Captain Murali Mathiahu, and he's associated with Marine Trust Limited, Senmar. With Marine Trust Limited, Senmar, and they are active on social media platforms like Twitter. This person is distinct from the individual involved with the 2017 fraud case. So if you're looking for Murali Mathiahu, it's not the captain. It's not the captain. Additionally, an Instagram account under the handle Mr. Murali 777 exists, but there is limited information available to confirm any connection to the aforementioned individuals. Given the commonality of the name, it's crucial to verify the context and details when researching or referencing.
Yeah, for sure.
Murali Mathiahu, just so everybody knows. So that's me covering my butt too.
The coffee is hot.
Yeah, the coffee is hot. Okay, and then we have another woman. Her name is Tiffany Butch. Have you heard of her?
No.
Okay, so on December 2018, Tiffany Butch, a 33-year-old woman from Timmins, Ontario, was charged with pretending to practice witchcraft, an offense under Section 365 of Canada's Criminal Code at the time. Known locally as the White Witch of the North, Butch was accused of offering to remove a curse in exchange for money. She denied the allegation, stating, "It's bogus. I'm innocent. I would never do anything like that." Notably, this charge was laid just before the law was repealed on December 14th, 2018, as part of an effort to modernize the criminal code and remove outdated provisions. In May of 2019, the charge against Butch was withdrawn. As part of a resolution, she agreed to make a $750 donation to the Lord's Kitchen, a local charity. Her lawyer, Sharon Saborin, explained that the Crown decided not to proceed with the case and was content with the donation.
Why are we donating to church?
Right.
What does that have to do with law?
Donate
Whatever.
to a local... Donate to... You know what people should donate to? Indigenous organizations. Yeah. Women's shelters. Just general shelters or resources for unhoused people. Not the Lord's Kitchen. I know that's probably a soup kitchen.
Yeah, but it's
still
Lord
going
is what
through
I
the
had.
church.
Yeah,
still
that's what I had the problem
because
with.
It's not the Lord preparing the meals.
There's supposed to be a separation of religion
and state.
Yeah,
I believe very much in separation of church and state.
Yeah, so
doesn't happen where we are, but
or
anywhere.
Neighboring, our neighboring countries.
This case drew significant media attention, highlighting the existence of the antiquated witchcraft law and its repeal. Butch's experience underscores the complexities and challenges associated with laws addressing fraudulent practices and the importance of ensuring they are applied fairly and appropriately. Okay, now we're going to talk about Northern Canada.
Oh, goody.
Because I found some information on Canada's forgotten witch hunts, the deadly accusations of Northern BC and the Yukon.
The Yukon would be interesting.
Yeah, we can't leave them out.
Yeah.
We can't leave our territories out.
I feel like because they have such smaller communities in other areas.
They get left out a lot.
Yeah, they do.
Then you know what? No. Not anymore, Yukon.
We got your back.
We got you. Although it has been largely erased from mainstream history, Canada experienced its own witch hunts just as deadly and destructive as those in Salem. These incidents, particularly in remote Indigenous and settler communities of northern British Columbia and the Yukon, followed a terrifying pattern of accusations, torture, and execution, often targeting the most vulnerable. One of the few written accounts of these witch hunts comes from American anthropologist John Honigman, who died in 1947. And he documented a series of witch killings in the interior regions of northern BC and the Yukon. His interviews revealed a chilling history of fear-driven violence that persisted well into the 20th century. Whoa.
Goody.
Right? So there was a boy who escaped death. In 1944, an anonymous man in northern British Columbia recounted to an interviewer a horrific event from his childhood, one that nearly cost him his life. As an 8-year-old, he had suffered the sudden death of his infant brother, and soon after, a local woman, Mrs. Peel, accused him of witchcraft. Oh my God, his brother had just died, and this old woman accused him of witchcraft, igniting a harrowing ordeal of interrogation and torture. Even members of his own immediate family participated in the abuse. They got the whole crowd looking for me, but they never found me, he later recalled. After enduring days of torment, the boy managed a last-minute escape into the wilderness, hiding as his pursuers came within breathing distance of his refuge.
It's like mass hysteria.
Right? And that's exactly what it was like in Salem. It was like a couple of like butthole teenage girls who were like, I don't like this girl. She must be a witch.
There was a theory that it was ergot poisoning. So it's like a fungus, that's the word I'm looking for, that got into the wheat.
Ooh.
And it causes mass hysteria and paranoia and stuff like that. And they thought that was actually connected to a lot of mass hysteria cases back then. The only thing that makes them be like maybe not so much is it went over 2 winters, so they would have had a whole new fresh crop of wheat. So
but the second year it could have just been like, well, we started this thing.
I think that was a lot of it. They eventually came forward and were like, so we maybe took this a little too far.
Is there anything we can take back?
Yeah.
My bad. So the physical and emotional scars of that night remained with him, that anonymous boy, his whole life. Honigman's research outlined a pattern behind these accusations. Much like in Salem or the European witch trials of the early modern period, paranoia often set in after the sudden death of a community member, whether from illness, accident, or unexplained causes. From there, suspicion fell on a specific individual, often a child or youth. Oh my God!
Yeah, it is usually.
Wow,
for
so
some
we
reason,
started
kids.
strong with the patriarchy, eh?
Yeah.
Because a matriarchy is when you can. A matriarchy is when you're living life for what's going to be the best interests for the children and the future children. And a patriarchy is when we do what's best for the men. So it's funny how in a patriarchy we try and kill children. And we still are. Okay. Those accused face 3 grim choices. 1, confess and accept their likely execution. Won't be doing that. 2, endure torture until they confessed. Don't like that option. Or 3, attempt to deflect suspicion onto someone else, often with disastrous consequences. She did it. It wasn't me.
And their scapegoat is children. Children.
We're gonna go for the kids because they can't explain themselves and they're dumber
Defenseless.
than us. Yeah. Honigman noted a mature person often sought to escape the charge of bewitchment by leveling suspicion on a child.
Oh.
One survivor, Sam Bob, wow.
That two
first names, can't trust him, recalled how some of his family members had to flee their home to save accused cousins from certain death. Another man, Beal Carlick, described a haunting memory of a bound, screaming child abandoned to die on the shore of Dees Lake, one of the many women and children accused, tortured, and left to perish. Oof. The most common form of torture was binding and starvation. Victims were sometimes hung upside down by their heels until they confessed. That's really sad.
That's disgusting.
It's awful. Despite the scale of these witch hunts, official recognition was almost non-existent. A series of RCMP dispatches from the early 1920s stands as one of the only official acknowledgments that these killings occurred. For years, reports from afflicted communities were dismissed or ignored. It wasn't until 1924 that the RCMP, 1924 isn't that long ago, that the RCMP finally launched an expedition to investigate. A 3-member team led by Mountie Theodore Sandy Wunsch was sent deep into the Casca region, a journey that was incredibly difficult at the time. The officers traveled by steamship to Alaska, then by river barge to Telegraph Creek. From there, they canoed and hiked for weeks before reaching what is now Lower Post, BC. Upon arrival, they found a deeply fractured community. The Casca people, along with other indigenous groups in northern BC, were being devastated by European-introduced diseases. Smallpox, tuberculosis. And I just listened to your episode on tuberculosis.
Yes, with Marcelina Brown.
Yes.
Yeah.
And had influenza had wiped out entire families. Many within the community viewed these epidemics as unnatural, leading to desperate searches for someone to blame. Yet, the Casca themselves rejected the idea that their culture had traditionally believed in witches in the same way that the Europeans did. It is not us who speak of witches, one elder told the RCMP. It is the white people. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, that tracks.
That tracks. The white people, we fuck shit up. And this is my apology, this podcast. The Casca have an oral history dating back to the time of the woolly mammoths, which is fucking cool.
Yeah.
Their survival over thousands of years depended on deep knowledge of the land and their traditions. However,
there's always a but.
Yeah. By the early 20th century, their way of life had been shattered by colonization, forced assimilation, and disease. So once again, as I've said many times before on this podcast, they were fine until we got there.
If it ain't broke,
don't fix it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Just because you're white doesn't mean you know more. Just because you're old doesn't mean you know more.
Just because you're white doesn't mean you're right.
Yeah, just because you're white doesn't mean you're right. With their communities in crisis, it is perhaps unsurprising that some turn to accusations of witchcraft as a way to make sense of unimaginable loss. The same pattern had played out countless times throughout history. In Europe, the most intense witch trials happened in communities devastated by war, famine, or plague. In Salem, accusations erupted during a time of political instability and disease outbreaks. And in northern BC and the Yukon, indigenous communities facing the catastrophic impacts of colonization became similarly vulnerable to paranoia and fear. While Canada's witch hunts may not be as widely known as those in Salem or Europe, they were just as real, just as deadly, and just as deeply rooted in the trauma of a collapsing world.
It's crazy to think that we did have them even. Like
we did have them, so I stand corrected.
Right?
I said we didn't have them earlier. We did have them.
It's like, because we're such a new country to think that, and I think a lot of people forget too that Canada was Upper Canada and Lower Canada before it was actually Canada.
Yeah, Canada.
And it's still a part of our history and...
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, all that stuff.
And it's really relevant.
Today. Yeah.
The witch killings of northern BC and the Yukon are an eerie reminder that witch hunts are not just a relic of the past. Fear, paranoia, and scapegoating still surface in moments of crisis, upheaval, and societal collapse. These events also highlight a disturbing pattern in Canadian history when Indigenous communities reported atrocities, whether witch killings, missing and murdered women, or the abuses of residential schools. Their cries for help were often ignored by authorities until decades too late.
It's still ignored. Highway of Tears.
Yep, that's right. Honingman's and I will be doing an episode on that as well. Honingman's 1947 report remains one of the only written records of these events. Without oral histories and survival accounts, this entire chapter of Canadian history might have been lost forever. The witch hunts of northern BC and the Yukon serve as both a warning and a lesson. When societies face devastation, who do they choose to blame? And how often are the most vulnerable, children, women, the powerless, made to suffer for the sins they never committed?
It's funny how when there's a more media producing tragedy, it's women and children first. Like Titanic.
Titanic, yeah. Oh, yeah, they had to make sure the women and children got off first at the Titanic.
Because
there were no witches on the Titanic.
Publicity stunts. Yeah. That's what it is when we're saved. Anything else, it's blame.
Anything else it was them.
Yeah.
I mean, had it not been a crew of men on the Titanic, I'm sure there are like, because there are old wives' tales. My grandpa was a sailor. There are old wives' tales about the sea, like, oh, you don't bring a woman on the boat.
Yeah, it was bad luck.
Yeah. So, and that's just because you men are dicks. All right, creeps. It's time for something new. Actually, I need my phone. Hit my knee on the coffee table.
Ouch.
Okay. All right, creeps, it's time for something new and something very close to home. We're launching a brand new segment we're calling Hometown Horrors because I love alliteration. So now we have, well, Creep of the Week, that's just a rhyme, and then we have Current Case. Now we have Hometown Horrors.
I like it.
This is where we pass the mic to you, our listeners, and share the creepy, unsettling, or downright terrifying stories that have haunted your hometowns and maybe even you. First up, we're kicking things off with a chilling tale from Jolene. She wrote in with an experience that stuck with her for years. One of those stories that makes you keep the lights on a little longer and double check the locks before bed. So settle in, maybe grab a blanket, because Jolene's about to take us into the shadows of her hometown. This is Hometown Horrors. Jolene's not going to take the mic. I'm just going to read it.
I was like waiting for you to play something.
I have that written a little
Sitting
funny.
here with anticipation.
You're waiting for Jolene's voice. So Jolene sent me in this email. And here we go. And I can't wait to hear like your theory on it. Mm-hmm. Hello, my name is Jolene. I have a spooky story to tell you from when I was about 8 years old. Okay, so one night my older sister came to see me and my parents with the bright idea that her and I should spend the night next door. Of course I wanted to, because that meant I was out of the watchful eye of my parents. Anything to get out of the house too. So with that, away we went. We get there and she decided to hang up a blanket over the window to keep the sun out in the morning. Bad idea. Anyway, the night was uneventful and I awoke in the morning pretty early and by myself. This is when I proceeded to investigate the house to see if anyone else was there, because my brothers usually stayed there. And I think this was maybe just like a house on the same property or something.
I was going to ask, like,
yeah.
Does it
She doesn't really specify, but I think it's like a house, probably like the same house on the property. Or,
right.
Yeah. But no one else seemed to be around. We were the only ones there, and I wandered into the bathroom and began to chat with myself in the mirror as usual. That's when I heard the sound of footsteps coming up from the stairs from the basement, and I froze because I had just come from down there and no one was there. Scary.
Weird bad.
Yeah. They were very heavy footsteps, as if someone was wearing heavy boots, and it's like, that's not your sister either, because she's probably a child or a teenager and not heavy walking. And it sounded like there was two of them, whatever it was. Immediately, I panicked and then ran to the room where my sister was still asleep. I hopped into the bed in which she was sleeping on. That's when I heard it. They were speaking some foreign language and their voice sounded very different, like the voice of an alien being or something. I didn't understand the language, but they sounded very creepy. That's when they got to the kitchen, and upon their arrival, they began to whisper in English this time and said, there was someone over there. And then the other one said, let's go and look. And that's when I began trying to pinch my sister as she slept. She wouldn't budge, so I quickly laid down and covered myself with a sheet as I heard them approach the room. I was so scared at this point because it was dark in the room. I could hear and feel them at the foot of the bed. At that point, I believe I passed out, because when I came to, I was alone in that room and the blanket was off the window and my sister was gone. Did I ever leave as fast as I could move? This is my first time really telling anyone about this situation, but I think it's finally time I got it out. I'm hoping that you don't think I'm crazy or anything, but with that, thank you. I do not think you're crazy.
So is the sister missing now, or?
No, the sister's
I was going to say.
I think she had gone home. I think she had just woke up early and gone home.
Yeah, that would freak me.
But it's like, was the sister ever there?
Yeah,
Did
right?
she sleepwalk over there, maybe? That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. She maybe sleptwalk over there. Do you have a history of sleepwalking, Jolene?
Yeah, because it's almost like you're vividly like you're dreaming while you're awake almost.
Yeah.
From what I don't have any experience with sleepwalking. I do with night terrors.
Yeah.
And that's very much like I know I'm asleep though, and I just can't wake up, and it's like there is somebody in the room with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So scary.
No,
I
not fun.
sleepwalk and I sleep eat.
Oh.
But Jolene, thank you so much for writing in.
That was creepy.
Really scary. That sounds really freaky. I do think you slept walked there. And I want to know more about this house. Like, email me in more details about the house.
Yeah. I'd be interested in the history of the house as well.
And where you're located. I don't even know. She didn't say if she was in Canada, or even if it's okay if you're not.
Yeah.
I'll read any
We like
hometown
a good
horrors
creepy story.
from anywhere. Yeah. But yeah, that sounds very interesting. And that brings us to the end of another journey into the shadows. If there's one thing the echoes of these trials have taught us, it's that the flames may be gone, but the heart still lingers in the walls of history.
Every story we uncover today still flickers in the present. Quiet reminders of what fear, power, and silence can do when they intertwine. And somehow, the past keeps reaching out.
Thank you, Amanda, for walking this crooked path with me once again. Your insight always adds that perfect chill down the spine.
It is always a pleasure, even when the company is a little haunted.
To our listeners, thanks for keeping your ears open and your minds curious. We'll be back soon with more strange, eerie, and unsettling stories from the edges of Canadian history and mystery.
Until then, stay safe, stay skeptical, and maybe leave the lights on.
You never know what might be waiting in the dark. Follow us on Instagram at Canadian Creepies and at Down the Crooked Path for updates and behind the scene extras.
We will see you next time down the crooked path.
Thanks for tuning in, Creepies. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to Kyle McDonald for editing and composing our theme song.